Welcome to Loaded and Rolling. I'm your host, Thomas Wasson, enterprise trucking expert here at FreightWaves. The topic for today is going to be fuel fraud, technology, and what QuikQ is doing to combat it. That's right, folks. It's not just the market that is bringing you down. Even when you go to the pump, you can have some issues. And we're super excited to be welcoming on our guest today. It's Rich Taute. He's Vice President of Sales at QuikQ, going to be joining us to talk a little bit about it. And Rich, super excited to have you on. Had some great conversations, especially learning about this technology. But for listeners who are not as familiar, let's dive in. Tell us a little bit about yourself first.
Sure. Rich Taute, I'm the Vice President of Sales here at QuikQ. I've been in the industry close to 30 years, from operating some of the largest truck stops in the country, billing card services, and fuel sales. So I guess over 30 years, I've got diesel in my veins at this point, right? So worked with carriers, worked with drivers, excited to be here. And, we've got a big mission out here to help stop fuel fraud for carriers across the country.
And it's a huge issue to even dig into because this technology has been around, but the importance and the value of it is continuously like a slow boil. And we're finally, it's getting to a point where it's like a lot of folks who have not traditionally considered integrating tech are now looking at it. Tell us a little bit about how QuikQ was one of the pioneers about it. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure. The company started close to 15 years ago, really trying to connect a buyer and a seller, so a truck stop and a carrier, to put fuel in a tank. So part of that problem over time has been the security of the transaction. So by deploying an RFID tag on a truck, it connects directly to an antenna in the lane and really pioneered the use of cardless technology in a very, very secure environment. So over 15 years, not a single fraudulent transactions that occurred with our RFID solutions.
And how does for the folks who aren't as familiar, how does the RFID system work and how it's integrated with pumps?
Yeah, so basically a truck pulls into a lane at a truck stop. We've got a sticker about the size of a credit card that goes on the windshield, and the lanes at the truck stop have an antenna. So as the truck pulls in, the antenna reads the tag and engages that the vehicle is actually in the lane. So our system actually will not only secure your fuel, we'll clean up your IFTA as well, because we know exactly which asset fueled at that time in that lane. And at any time, if that connection breaks between the RFID tag and the antenna, we'll actually turn off the dispenser as well. So there's some secondary benefit to make sure all the billed fuel actually goes into your truck.
And that is something that is very safe because a lot of fleets typically use the fuel cards. The card is put in, you throw in a pin. When we're looking at some of the challenges and why a lot of folks are looking at RFID, what's the issues with some of the fuel fraud? What is the lowest hanging fruit that they're typically going after?
Yeah, the fuel card's been around forever. Very easy to clone, very easy to skim. And a lot of carriers out there have been operating fuel cards for a long time. And just shifting to this technology, we've seen our customers really kind of take a step back and deploy technology in other parts of their business. But then you start looking at fuel, there's an opportunity to roll out some tech there. And RFID has really been a great solution for them. So, grabbing tech on all parts of their business right now, they're really starting to attack it from a fuel perspective.
So everyone's trying to save money and pinch pennies. And part of this is what you offer called QuikQ Secure. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. What QuikQ Secure is a suite of products that we, really think that will help a carrier reduce fuel fraud out on the road, provide some better accurate information. So QuikQ Secure is a combination of RFID technology at the pump and also real-time, basically 2FA multi-factor authentication on a fuel card transaction. So RFID, we verify that your truck is physically in the lane at the truck stop, where if you use a fuel card, we offer both payment instruments. But if you choose to use a fuel card, we'll actually text your driver in real time and we'll say, hey, Thomas, is this you fueling at this truck stop, right? So it's a simple yes, no response and gives us kind of a second level authorization on a card transaction.
Because a lot of times it's like a first level authorization. I'm assuming you have to like plug in a pin. Like for the fraudsters themselves, is it really that simple compared to that two-factor to just swipe it and put it in? Like,
it's pretty simple. The skimmers that are out there, they can install a skimmer in about 18 seconds. You won't even know it's on a pump. They'll capture the card number, any of the prompts that are entered by the driver. And most times carriers have static prompts, meaning they're using the same unit number and the same driver ID. So imagine someone cloning your ATM card, knowing your PIN number, and going out and recreating a card. That's what's happening in the marketplace. So by using RFID and using second level authentication through our Secure Swipe product, we're kind of putting a dent in it. We're blocking fraud on with both products.
And another interesting factor you talked about was that once people have the card, compared to the RFID and the multi-factor with the card, they can fill up other people and they can buy around for the station.
Correct. So basically, we call it a Splashville. I've operated some of the busiest truck stops in the country. I've seen this happen with my own eyes. There's a cash exchange between two drivers, and the second driver will just basically get a few gallons of fuel charged back to the first driver's company. And it's really difficult for a carrier to find it because the gallons are really small and miles per gallon, MPGs are not really impacted, but it's money out of the fleet's pocket. So with RFID, if that truck pulls out of the lane and I would pull my truck behind him to get that splash fueling, we would actually turn off that dispenser. So that eliminates that 100% with a RFID component.
And you brought up a great thing last time I spoke to you about how that happens with reefer units too. So it doesn't have to be the driver selling to other driver. They can theoretically, I'm going to top off the reefer unit and save some cents as well.
Correct. So great example. We've seen instances where the driver pays for their tractor fuel, but does not pay for the reefer fuel. Owner operators typically, reefer fuel is billed back to the fleet. So the driver may start a reefer transaction, but they haven't actually pulled forward to fill the reefer unit. So they'll splash a little fuel into the tractor, set a nozzle down, pull up, and then top off the reefer unit. So it looks like billable reefer fuel, but some of that fuel actually went in a tank.
And that's where some of the safety stuff comes in, because let's say that I have a reefer and I have the RFIDs. You can set your RFIDs separately so you can't try to milk the system.
Correct. So with RFID, it's an asset-based system. So a truck is assigned a specific RFID tag and a trailer is assigned a different tag. So a trailer tag can only buy reefer fuel, a truck tag can only buy dispensed DEF and dispensed diesel. So it cleans up a lot of the fuel tax reporting and IFTA refunds, if applicable, within those states. So accounting departments usually love it when carriers switch to RFID.
Because a lot of times I've noticed for some fleets, you either have to try to pull the card transaction, look at the approximate gallons and stuff, but others you still have to submit your receipts. So you're waiting for the driver to submit the receipts and digitize it before, and it can cost you more money just waiting and guessing.
Yeah, correct. And everything that we do is in real time. So if you've got an error with a transaction, if you want to look at where Thomas just fueled, you can see that instantly in our system. So in today's space, right, everyone wants everything now, right?
Yeah.
So we deliver that to you, right? That security at the time of purchase and also the additional information within our system to know what your drivers are doing out over the road.
And I think that kind of ties into some of the impacts of fraud. One of them being, what happens when you're a victim of fraud? Do you get that money back from the fuel station? Who has the credit? Like the financial impacts of it are actually much worse if you don't have a good provider, because you may not even get it credited back correctly.
Yeah, and I think, this is not a new thing. It's been going on for 25 years that I've been really exposed to this piece of fraud. It becomes to a point where, am I going to get a credit or am I not going to get a credit? It's almost a game by game call, play by play call. And oftentimes the carriers are flipping the bill for that fraud. So, it's not a problem until it's a problem. So you have insurance for other parts of your business, things like RFID are the insurance against fraud. Right. So, that's kind of what we're kind of preparing for it. It's a real issue. Carriers prepare for other things within their business. you need to prepare for fraud.
And I think that's something interesting because the importance of authentication, building out this RFID infrastructure. Talk a little bit about truck stop partners. What does it mean when you get to white label something? Is that like a green flag?
Yeah, so we have truck stop partners that have invested time, money, and resources to deploy RFID antennas in their lanes. And they oftentimes will offer their own internal billing product. So truck stop A offers a product at their locations. It actually runs on our technology, right? It's just it has their logo on the product versus a QuikQ logo. So that's kind of what a white label means. It's really a nice way to deploy technology, take some ownership, bring additional value for a truck stop operator to offer a very secure environment for their carriers to fuel.
And that kind of, you touched on a while ago, the rail system. I guess becoming a payment rail, that's something behind the scenes infrastructure. Is that some of the added benefits when we're talking about the differences in the rails? Because it does seem like it took me a minute to learn the rail system.
Sure.
What does it mean to ride the rails in fuel talk?
Sure. So, you've got basically an open loop card and a closed loop card. So an open loop card would be like a credit card product, a Visa, a MasterCard. Those are traditionally open looped cards. QuikQ is a closed loop card or a proprietary card, which means we have a direct connection between our system and the truck stop to authenticate a transaction, to receive the final totals of the purchase, and run that information through our billing system. So there's no intermediary; it's a direct flight, call it.
Yeah.
Right. Versus running through a credit card processor, you've got to take an indirect flight, right? You've got to lay over somewhere on that transaction.
I got to call the card company, tell them this happened at this vendor, wait for them to. So, and there's something to be said about, as we're looking at the values of that, having quick access to customer support when things get wrong. So that's part of the benefits of this closed loop.
Correct. So we have almost virtual line of sight to the transaction. We see every component, what the driver entered at the pump, when they entered it, what location they're at, what products were authorized, what products were not authorized, right? So we see all of that in real time, and then we see the final totals of those transactions, and then adjust their daily limits based on the transaction that just closed, right? So it's an ever-changing open to buy on that fuel for that truck, basically, where you're just monitoring it. It's not wide open, right? Carriers need to have controls, right, in what they do, and that's gallon limits and a variety of other things that they'll deploy for their trucks.
One of the controls that you all have that is really cool is the 1 hour rule. That's something that's really interesting. Tell us a little bit about that, and why is it so important in terms of fraud?
Sure. So basically, I think we've all gotten a credit card alert, right, with our personal credit card. So our 1 hour rule basically says that a fuel card cannot be used multiple times within an hour. We typically set it at any location. So how that ties into fraud, the fraudsters are creating clones of cards, and we may be using a card here in Chattanooga, and we may have someone in Phoenix using the same card number at the same time. So unless you're in a jet plane, you can't get from Chattanooga to Phoenix in an hour, right? We can't get there in an hour anyway because we're so far. So, that's what that 1 hour rule does. It protects the carrier, gives them a little bit of a safeguard. And really, we're blocking fraud with that every single day as well. Because logically, we're just doing a lat long check, right? Could you have driven from point A to point B in logical truck time?
Well, it could also be if drivers are at home and they may want to try to use the card, but they're not near the truck. So you can also catch that kind of illicit activity.
Correct. And, some of the other things that we've done, a lot of the truck stops that are out there, the larger ones, offer a mobile payment device, mobile app, right? They'll put a fuel card into the digital wallet. Our technology will work off that as well. So if someone was to load their fuel card into that digital wallet through our QuikQ Secure, we can actually authenticate that just as if they swiped it, right? We can verify and send that second level authorization to the driver to reply to a text message that they're actually fueling. So mobile apps have been traditionally a good way to steer clear of some fraud, but unfortunately the fraudsters have figured out that's an option for them to fraud, right?
Yeah.
They just take that card and they'll load it into a mobile app. So it's an ever-growing ecosystem of fraud, right? So we're fighting every single day with business partners, with our carriers and vendors to attack this on a daily basis.
And I think one of the fascinating things is that bots and phishing are another thing. I'm assuming drivers, it's not enough to just have a skimmer take my card. Now I have bots and phishing attempts that if I click the wrong link, now my data gets compromised or something else.
Correct. So I think this is fairly standard within our space in our industry.
Yeah.
Typically, you're using some type of 2FA mechanism to get into your account. So that's getting into our portal to manage changes in your account, issue new cards to driver, issue tags to trucks. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of things. We see it. I think we all see it in our daily lives, right? Folks phishing, and you have to watch what you click. So we're pretty upfront with our customers. If you want to use our portal, you're going to have to multi-factor to get in. You don't have a choice. And that's to protect their account and also to protect us as well. Right.
Yeah, and I'm kind of curious. Small fleets, large fleets. Typically, large fleets had the bat phone or the red handled phone when they wanted to have fuel issues.
Yep.
They make deals. Tell us a little bit about that and like some of the importance, because I'm assuming one of the challenges is if I'm a small fleet and I just sign up for any kind of provider, I'm going through all this extra stuff, I may not get the help I need in time.
Sure. One of the things that we really hang our hat on here at QuikQ is customer service, right? It's great to acquire a customer, to get them on board, but you've got to hang on to them, right? I think unfortunately with technology, that voice to voice communication has diminished just in the world, every single day. So if we have a small fleet and they need service, if it's a bad day at QuikQ, you're waiting a minute to talk to a human being, and that's no joke.
Oh, wow.
So we're talking to you pretty quick, trying to help you as fast as we can, because we know at that point there's typically a driver stuck. Truck's not moving, they're not making any money. So we need to get that driver back on the road. So very, very quick to respond, 24/7, 365, bilingual, really here to keep those trucks moving, right? We can work with the carrier at corporate on a bigger issue, but from my perspective, in my role, I have two customers. I have the carrier and I have their driver.
Yeah.
I've got to keep that driver moving. So that's why our customer service team is so important to us, that we're quick and we're accurate to get those drivers moving.
And does that also allow with the cards and everything? I'm assuming set aside things and try to identify. Like I've had issues with drivers in the past. They try to put like food and potato chips and then call it like DEF.
Yep.
Like is that another form of fraud that the platform and the technology has to also address? It's not only at the pump, but it's behind the convenience store as well.
Yeah, and you're going human to human at that point, right? If you get a cashier to ring up your bag of pretzels as a gallon of oil, that's going to happen. I think anymore those products are scanned at the point of sale at a cash register, so it's already pre-programmed. So if they're trying to charge that bag of pretzels onto their QuikQ account, if the carrier allowed it, we would allow it to go through, but most carriers don't allow groceries to be charged, right? It's a gallon of oil or an additive or a wiper blade. Those are allowed transactions. So the controls are there based on the cashier scanning like the UPC code on a product.
Yeah. And that's where it goes into educating the carriers, because I'm assuming that from customer testimonials and stuff, the biggest challenge I'm assuming is that this has never been a problem before. Something happened. Now this is a huge problem. How do we prevent this moving forward?
Right. And I think it's kind of interesting. I've been doing this a long time, and a lot of people don't understand what fuel fraud is. They don't understand the controls they need to have in their business, right? They probably understand those controls in other areas, but this is billable purchases to a carrier, right? Whatever they are. So we highly recommend really looking at everything a carrier is doing from fuel and other purchases, just to make sure it's tight, that the limits are correct, and they're following what the owner of that fleet or manager really wants to happen. Have seen unfortunate situations, right, where folks will set their accounts up incorrectly, and the driver does get to put their bag of pretzels on their account, which is not what the fleet wanted to do, right? So every new customer that comes on at QuikQ goes through a launch process with a launch manager. We go through all those protocols and limits and really work with the carrier to put as bulletproof of a solution as possible together to keep them secure and safe. Because at the end of the day, they're going to get billed for what hits their account. So we need to keep it tight.
And kind of looking at in terms of instances and frauds? Do I have like the same kind of risk in an urban and a rural location? Is there a location-based aspect as well for carriers in addition to the other challenges?
That's a great question. So I've seen the heat map of fraud. It's in very dense cities and it's out in rural America. So fraud is fraud. It's going to happen wherever it wants to happen. There are parts of the country that are a little more prone than others. But we've seen it at the, most remote truck stop to some of the busiest, kind of inner city truck stops. So it's really occurring everywhere.
It's like HVP rules. You always need a good plan regardless of the location. Because
Right.
you'll have that one carrier who's like, well, I'm only out in this area. It's like, no, you are not. No, it's safe.
Right. And that's a great segue. So, there are other things you can do. So I live out west. Maybe I'm a carrier and I only operate the 11 Western states. Right. So part of our security protocols with carriers is say, hey, why would we ever turn on a truck stop in Chattanooga, Tennessee, if you don't ever go to Chattanooga, Tennessee? Logically, right?
Yeah.
Right. So we'll go that extra mile for our customers if they let us in, right? If you really want to secure things, let us in. Let us know how you operate your business, where you travel. Obviously, if they get a great paying load, they may be coming to Chattanooga. Right. And they'll take that load, but then we have solutions for that as well. So it's really understanding your business and securing all of those purchases from the get-go. Right. It's kind of too late to secure it if you've already had fraud.
Well, it also ties into you can find out, why do I suddenly need to authorize Chattanooga? And if you're an owner, maybe you have that one person who's sending drivers out to other places. There's other benefits to having this tech stack. Something as simple as a fueling and have that validation can uncover. It's like the anthill. You uncover the bigger issue.
Correct. And, it all comes down to planning, right? A carrier plans a load. A carrier plans a route. A carrier is not planning for fraud.
Yeah.
And that's really the thing we're trying to get out. And we don't wish fraud upon anyone, but it's just out there. So let's plan on it happening. Let's address it, and let's do everything we can to prevent it, right, from happening going forward. We've had that experience with our own customers to say, hey, we got to tighten up a little bit more. They tighten up, and boy, we don't ever hear from them again about fraud. Right. And we really push those things, but it's really the carrier's decision on whether they how tightly they want to deploy all the solutions. Right. Our recommendation is tighten that thing down as much as you can and not have to deal with that fraud. But it's still out there. We're fighting the fight every single day.
So let's talk to you while we have a little bit of time left.
Sure.
How does it, let's say I'm an owner operator. I've never paid attention to this, but I'm up to 5 trucks now and I don't trust, Sketchy Bob.
Okay.
I see these random costs associated with him.
Okay.
How do I get started with QuikQ? What does it look like from the very get-go? Do I need the RFID? Do I need all this stuff? What are the early stages? What does it look like to get integrated and launched?
Yeah, I think, take the assumption that we've got an account set up for you. We've signed you up. You're coming over. You still may be driving one of your 5 trucks. That often happens, right? With a smaller fleet, one of the owners driving one still, and you've got 4 other folks out there driving on your behalf. So it goes right back to what I said, sir. How much fuel do you want your driver to get per day? Where do you want them to fuel? What are the concerns you have? What other products can they purchase? Oil, additives, wiper blades, and really trying to get them to understand, hey, you've got 2 options at QuikQ to not have fraud. A, RFID, or B, we can do secure swipe. If you don't do those, you're putting yourself at risk. We're giving you the choice for dinner. What would you like for dinner? Would you like RFID or would you like secure swipe? Or you can run them in tandem. You could have 2 dinners if you wanted to, depending on where you fuel. So that's our push with every single carrier. And that carrier would go through our launch program like I talked about earlier. So we're going to push that really hard because we don't want to talk to you about fraud after you start, right? We're going to talk to you about it when you start.
Yeah.
Right.
At the end of the day.
Yeah.
Tying things up, folks are more interested in, not only getting in touch, learning about this product, seeing the literature out. We have an article that we wrote in partnership with QuikQ FreightWaves. I wrote it, so you can check it out. Thomas Wasson, author at FreightWaves. Folks want to find out more. What's the best way?
Easy way to do it is just go to QuikQ.com. We've got everything you need to to contact us to learn more about QuikQ Secure, Secure Swipe, RFID, other products that we offer. All of our contact information's on there, our customer service line's on there. So if you want to see how quickly we answer a phone, give it a call. I'll put it out there. We're pretty quick to answer a phone call, but that's the best way. But we really love to get out and meet our customers. At the end of the day, I've got a team that's on the street. We want to come in and we want to learn your business as a carrier every day. So happy to do things over the phone or virtually through a computer, but I'm kind of an old school guy by trade. I love sitting across the desk and talking to a customer.
Well, I'm glad you got to come down here to sit across the desk as well, Rich. Thank you so much for your time. Check them out, folks, at QuikQ, QuikQ. Amazing stuff. Speaking of time, we're unfortunately out of time, but if you are just joining us, this thing will be up on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, wherever you may find your podcasts. We also have the Loaded and Rolling newsletter, sponsored by QuikQ right now. You can check it out, FreightWaves.com/loaded and rolling, Thursdays at 2 p.m. That's a wrap for today. Join us next week. We'll do it live.